So I've got Roy English here, otherwise known musically as Jagwar Twin, and he's gracefully joined the channel, and I'm very grateful for that. This is the first time we've done anything like this, and it's something I've wanted to do for a while, and I hope we can do more of it. He's the one here, and that excites me beyond words. So Roy, again, thank you so much for being here, man.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to say something really quick, kind of in the realm of what we're discussing right this second. I heard you say something on another podcast or interview of sorts, and you said that, and I relate to it so heavily beyond just the idea of these podcasts and these talks. You said when it comes to these, you have like a sense of anxiety because you don't know what you're going to say, and you like kind of boiled it down to just telling the truth, which is ironic because that's a lot of your music. That's how I approached, like when I first started the channel. I was so anxious to do it because it was like, who cares? Like, what do I even say? I don't want to fill space with just like nonsense. And I do feel the same way about like these type of interviews, which I feel like is like what you were getting at in that podcast to open up. So I just found that so fascinating. And it's exactly how I felt going into this. I was like, oh man, like as much as I want to do this and these things going forward, there's this sense of anxiety of like, how do I fill up that space? And I don't want to just say stuff just to say it. I like seeing you say that meant a lot to me because it really resonated with me.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, especially because you and I both love music, but a lot of people who love different kinds of art, or maybe they don't love art. I think everyone just in general, really, when I think about it, is very sensitive. And sometimes when you're sensitive, you feel things and you don't even know why you feel them. And so with you know, being anxious, or, you know, say you walk into a room and all of a sudden it's like, I'm nervous, or what am I going to say, or how am I going to fill this space? And it's like, well, maybe you're picking up someone else's anxiety. And also, even if and even if you're not, it's like you ask yourself, well, do I have anything to actually be anxious about? And I don't need to say anything. I can just sit here and be. And if the other person feels awkward, that's not on me. You know, and you don't try to make somebody feel awkward. Of course not. But if you don't have anything to say, you don't need to say it. And I think a lot of my life, you know, being bullied or made fun of, or like caused me to go inside and be very, very shy, and just like I thought everything that I would say would be picked apart or made fun of or whatever it was. But in later years, realizing like, man, if I just tell the truth, everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. But it's hard to tell the truth. Like you just say, oh yeah, tell the truth. But the hardest part of telling the truth is telling the truth to yourself. Like, what am I actually feeling in this moment? Do I feel nervous? And if I do, that's okay. And then as soon as you say that, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, that's gone.
Yeah. You're absolutely right about that. And what's interesting about that too is that I feel like that's not a natural thing. Like you have to work your way to that point. And you go through a lot of situations where I'm speaking from personal, not for anyone else, but like where you do lie to yourself quite a bit. And what I found really interesting about something you said, again, this goes to like something you said somewhere else. And you said that I have to see this person as myself, looking back at myself. And that was about a breakup. And what I found so fascinating about that personally is that I feel like when it comes to breakups, those are the hardest situations to be honest with yourself, especially as you get older and older. It's just always really hard to be honest with yourself. And that like first degree level of empathy, like that way to look at it, which is the way you described to look at it, is like one of the best ways to look at it. And I feel like that really comes across in a lot of your music. And like Subject to Flooding, your first album that I checked out, has that like dripping all over it.
Yeah, I mean, Subject to Flooding was my sort of experimentation with myself, and starting to explore some of these concepts, and sort of like there's a mix of old me and new me. I guess you could say it that way.
I get that.
I'm trying to, and we're always going to be, you know, forever unpacking more and learning more. But Subject to Flooding really started this big shift, and some of it was, you know, this idea of like human beings are wired for pattern recognition. And at that time, which was, man, it must maybe 3 years ago or something, I was feeling almost subconsciously like, okay, what's happening to the world? There's this pattern that's going on of the way that we're thinking as a collective. And if this continues and we continue to keep separating into more and more separate pieces, different groups and different things, and this against this, and whatever, we're gonna hit the metaphorical flood. There's flood mythology all around the world, different religions, different cultures. And I'm a big mythology nerd, and essentially what the flood is a.
I got a question about that. We'll get there.
Yeah. So with that, it's like, okay, well, this may happen. We're subject to flooding, and then we saw, a couple of years later, COVID and extreme polarization in our world. If say you describe yourself, or I guess you could say describe yourself as a Democrat, you say the Republicans are crazy and they're stupid. Describe yourself as a Republican, you say the Democrats are evil and they're whatever it is, on either side. And you got to look like, man, both sides have valid points, and both sides are right, and both sides are wrong, and we can't keep ripping each other apart. As a world, we need to come together. And so that's where we're at now, and that's where the new album's headed. But Subject to Flooding was beginning to explore that. I think there's a flood going to happen, and because all humans are wired for pattern recognition, whether we are aware of it or not.
It's interesting that you say that too, because you talked about, well, really quick. So Subject to Flooding is based on mythology, because I just made this assumption that it was just like related to like death and like anxiety. And that feeling of that, but it's actually like specifically from a mythological something.
Well, everything is mythological at some level.
Okay.
At the deepest level, it's like the archetypal mind is going to be in every single thought. And I mean, I love mythology, and I've been fascinated with it since I was a little kid. So it may have a mythological underpinning, but there are other themes that build on top of those.
Well, talking about like how you, like you said, you pointed out like Democrats, Republicans, and how we villainize each other in all these ways, and it make them like an enemy, as opposed to just being open-minded and trying to understand each other and listen. And it's the stuff you get into a lot on Subject to Flooding, not specifically like certain titles and stuff, but that coming togetherness and humanizing each other. What I love about that is that when you do get to tracks like Good Day and No Fake Friends, which are kind of really about that, it makes those songs hit even harder. I'm a huge R&B fan of all music, of course, but just because of where I'm from and how I grew up, that's just what I'm a fan of, like, in my heart. So there's a lot of songs, like Good Day, and both of the songs, actually, there's a lot of songs kind of that center around those topics, sort of, but, like, I'll always listen to them growing up and even now, and I might like the sound of them, but they might not really resonate with me because they're in the midst of an album that's kind of all the same stuff, and like I'm not sure if the artist is really being honest about it or not, or just like made it because it sounds good. But there's other situations where I know that it is genuine, but like it's kind of a mixed bag. And what's so great about what you did is that it was mixed in an album with such like honesty and empathy that once those tracks come up, it's like, no, this guy definitely like means this stuff, because like listen to everything else he's talking about.
Yeah, and there was such a like I said, the process of the album really caused me to think, like, what am I saying? Like there's some lyrics and there's some songs I'm like, I would have done that differently. And I think every artist feels like I would have said that differently. But you're figuring it out as an artist, what your unique perspective is, and what's helpful. Why are you putting out a song? Why are you putting out music in the first place? And I think, there's varying levels of that in Subject to Flooding, especially as the album went on. It got more clear for me of okay, I need to say these type of things because I feel them, because this is true to me. Um, and in the past, and even going into the album at first, it was like, well, I want to make something that's successful or that other people will like,
Hmm.
or whatever. Um, but what I realized is, I mean, I've been making music for almost 10 years, maybe probably longer actually. And a lot of what I did didn't matter to me,
Hmm.
and therefore it didn't matter into the realm of matter. Um, and that's like with everything that we do as human beings. Like if it doesn't matter to you, it's not gonna matter. It's not gonna materialize. Um, it's a universal law. Uh, so just do what matters to you and tell the truth. Again, everything goes back to telling the truth from your perspective. It doesn't mean you have the ultimate truth. I don't have the ultimate truth. You don't have the ultimate truth. But we have the truth that we have now from our perspective and liable to change. If someone goes, what if you think about it this way? Oh, dang, thank you. I'm glad we could have an open dialogue. I didn't see it that way. Um, yeah.
You say that like what you're saying now, it's ironic because the two newer singles, I've gotten the chance to listen to I Like to Party and then there's Down to You, represent so much of like what you just said. And
Mhm.
at the same time you also said that we're constantly uh it's like it's a mix between being our new selves and our old selves, and it's always going to be that way. And I feel like you probably just try and separate yourself from that old self as best you can as you go on and learn and become your new self, but there's always a version of that old self that's always there, like kind of what you said. How far removed, because you also said that you there's some things in the album you would have changed, subject to flooding I'm speaking on now, like how far removed do you feel from that old self, or is it still like a somewhat decent combination of stuff, like in this day, considering your two new singles are much more geared towards exactly what you're saying, like they're right down that alley?
Right. That's a really good question. And I think the way I look at it is like you're building upon a foundation. Your old self is a foundation, and then you do this, and then this, and this, and it's not like you're discarding the old self as worthless, even if you've been the most dark, twisted up person ever, right? You still learn from that and you build on that, and in some ways that's the personal journey, but that's also the journey of us as a collective. We're like our parents, like we're building on whatever our parents got to, and we build on top of that for better or worse, right? And they were just doing the best that they could with their parents, and for generations back, like we're built on our ancestors and all those who came before us, all the positive things they did, all the negative things they did. But it's important to not cast them all to the side, or even, whatever it is, whatever culture you're from, or whatever, if you subscribe to one religion or another religion or whatever, it's like they're all important building blocks of expanding human consciousness. Essentially, they're like tools, they're mechanisms to keep building on. But we just can't get stuck at like this is the ultimate whatever thing it is,
Yeah.
and then stay there. Like always be valuing what came before in ourselves and in the bigger thing, and building. Like going some of the hard experiences I've gone through, or me just being a complete asshole, like whatever it is, like I'm glad that I experienced those things, and I'm glad that I experienced what it was like on that side. I'm glad that I've known really deep depression and really deep sorrow and really deep and crippling anxiety where I couldn't go to the grocery store because I just couldn't stand the thought of somebody even looking at me. Like, I'm so glad that I've seen darkness because I can understand it, and I can understand that there's something on the other side of that as well with perspective.
That's so resonating, and like perspective is the last word you use, and that completely encapsulates everything that you just said. It gives you so much more perspective. I've dealt with like anxiety and depression all of my life, so like you saying a lot of those things hits my core. And as someone who hates the moments where I feel those things, I would never take them back, like you said, because I can't appreciate and have that perspective now. if I didn't deal with those things all my life in certain moments. So again, you say a lot of things that resonate with me, but on subjects of flooding, aside from that, what I found really interesting as well is so when I did your first song that was introduced to me anyway, not your first song. First one I checked out was Down to You, and I didn't know anything about you, and I avoid comparisons on the channel as best I can because like every artist is so different and has their own mind. But I couldn't help, and because it came from like a sourced fan base that because I'm very familiar with the people that subscribe and follow to me, and it was a source fan base of Five Sauce. So there were some sounds that reminded me of that, and I made the comment during the reaction. Then I did what did I do? Long Time Coming, and then I did Subject to Flooding, the whole album, and I completely regretted doing any comparison with you because you do this. So I've done a lot of albums on the channel, a ton. I don't even know how many, like maybe 50 or something, maybe less. I don't know. And I can confidently say that your album, your last album, your first album, bended genres unlike any album I've checked out. I can say that very easily, very confidently, and that is one of my favorite things amongst many about the album. And I say it in the reaction for anyone that decides to check it out. Is that something that you did consciously, and is it something you're going to do moving forward with the next project? It's just something I'm really fascinated about.
I think starting out music, I was always very well. First, I was just like anti-genre, like I don't want to do it,
Yeah, I get that. Don't call it this. Don't call it that.
Yeah. And I think Subject to Flooding was sort of like what I was saying was the process of exploring, like, what do I really want to do? What really resonates with me? What style resonates with me musically, lyrically, all the things. And I think I sort of found it through the process of the album. And that album's cool because it's sprinkled with all the different trials. There's this version. There's No Fake Friends, and then there's Superhuman, and then there's Loser, and then there's Long Time. Like they're very different.
Extremely.
And it was really fun to kind of just like, well, this was my process of exploring who I am partly, and what Jagwar Twin is bigger than me just as an individual. And I think it's cool to just leave that process out for people to hear sort of the growth into finding something that's uniquely Jagwar Twin. And I think things for the next album will probably be more, it'll probably be a little more of a unit, not in a better or worse way.
Okay.
But just because at the moment I have such a specific thing that I want to communicate to myself partly, and then as a reflection to the rest of whoever listens to it.
Can you answer that, the specific thing you want to reflect, or is that not something you particular, or does that resonate in the first two singles already?
The essence of what I want to reflect is it's such a deep question, and I don't want it to be misinterpreted, but it's the idea of we're all mirrors to each other, and we're all one thing. We're all one collective human race. And so beginning to see others as yourself starts to change things, and that the world's in our hands, each individually, to change that. And that's sort of like the very, very broad thing. I mean, it's touched on, on Down to You, especially like it all comes down to you. It's said very plainly.
That's such a beautiful mindset, though, to me. Like that idea that we're all mirrors of each other. But it's so funny that you would say that I don't want it to be misunderstood, because there's gonna be a section of people that will just be like, no, that person has nothing to do with me and their beliefs and our values, etc. Like they do not align. Like no, hard no. And hopefully there's a much bigger version of people that do like believe and that can resonate with that. But like what you say before that to preface it is so fascinating because it's something that I even do a lot. It's like I really hope people don't misunderstand what I'm about to say if I say something that I really believe in. And I find myself constantly prefacing statements like that, even though I really would rather not. But I just do because I know there is the existence of a percentage of people that will push against that. And is that something that like you consciously are aware of, and yet you still just have to go for like what you believe in as far as when you're creating your music?
Yes, I'm very aware of that, and it's like there's times where I'm like, I'm kind of scared, like,
Yeah,
especially with cancel culture
yeah,
and with all
exactly.
this stuff, and it's like we got to stop canceling people
It's my least favorite thing.
because the whole point, like, everybody could has the potential to be the most evil person in the world if you put yourself in a certain circumstance. um you can see how you could have been that. If you really are serious about knowing who you are, you can see yourself as the most evil person in the world. But on the reverse of that, you can also see yourself as the most amazing superhero in the world too. um but so when you cancel somebody, even if what they did was absolutely wrong, you're not allowing them the redemptive hero journey. It's like, and also, if you're fighting something and you're lashing out against something, you become that thing without knowing.
There it
That's
is.
just how it works. um so this cancel culture, it's making, like you said, like, I gotta question what I say. Is this going to be taken wrong? And we got to stop that. We
Yeah.
really got to stop that, because that is not the way to expand our collective human consciousness. Doesn't mean you let people get away with doing bad things. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I agree completely. To the extreme, like, everything you said is so on point for me, because cancel culture is, and like going into something like what I decided to go into and doing all this and making it a career. That was something that, and like I'm doing it on a smaller scale because I'm not creating art. Like I'm just giving my opinion on things. So having to have that seed in your head of um, cancel culture exists, you better be careful, just sucks. Yeah, vehemently am a big time against cancel culture.
I said this. I forget where someone was asking me about it, and with cancel culture, it's like, well, if you just cancel yourself, no one can cancel you. And that doesn't mean like you're not going out and trying to say things that are gonna piss people off or whatever. It's just like, I'm gonna tell the truth from my perspective, and it could be wrong. And I hope that I'm wrong and that someone else has, oh, cool, then I grow from that. And then
Exactly.
we all grow from that. And that's the whole point of conversation and open dialogue.
Like
So
what is
cancel yourself.
if cancel yourself, and if someone like is wrong and you don't introduce them to the perspective of like this is wrong because of this, it's just like you're canceled. What is that person supposed to do from there? Like where do they go from there when that's your approach to it?
Right.
So I don't know. But speaking of potentially cancel culturist topics, I do have another question that is along the lines of something that I probably would have rather avoided talking about when I first started doing this. But as time went on, I leaned more towards, okay, you know what, just be yourself and be honest about everything, because that's the least anxious way to go about things, because you're not, it's exactly what you said somewhere else in the very beginning. If you're honest, you don't have to worry about anything, like, ever. So just do that. My personal beliefs is I don't believe in God, but at the same time, I'm completely wide open to like the idea of it and everyone believing in it. And what I find interesting is I've seen that you're from a conservative Christian family upbringing, And you make a lot of heaven references in your songs. And I don't know what your beliefs are, and I'm not asking you to like profess that here, but there's a lot of heaven references in your lyrics, like at least three. There's like heaven in the sky, there's heaven's gate, and then there's like a hallelujah stick up, which is less of a heaven reference and more of just like a play on words to get your hands in the air. But what I really appreciate about it is that a lot of the times I will hear God in a song, and like because I don't align myself with the belief, but I completely understand it and am open to it. I'll just enjoy like the sound of that, but not resonate with the lyric. With you, when you do it in a way that's open ended for everybody, where they don't. It's not like you're pushing that on them. It's just like literally a lyric for you, and it just makes perfect sense the way you do it. Is that conscious, or is that something that you are putting in there because of your beliefs?
Is it conscious?
If that makes sense.
Is what part conscious? Like putting the lyric in or the feeling behind it?
I guess both. Like putting the lyric in and knowing like, hey, I'm saying the word heaven. If people don't believe in that, they might not resonate with this.
Great question. I understand. Well, the way that I look at heaven or God references is probably very different than someone who maybe would be of a conservative faith. I would say that I'm all faiths and no faiths at the same time. When I talk about those things, it's sort of like the idea that heaven is inside of you, inside of the individual, but it's also in the external. But what's inside of you creates the external, and it it's such a complex topic to get into.
And it's a dangerous place to go with the public going from a cancel culture transition.
It isn't though. Like
it shouldn't be.
It doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
You can. This is the way I think about God, and this is like, if you're to tell, say, someone who says that they're a Muslim, they have their God, they know their God, they worship, that's their God. And then say someone who's a Christian, they have their God and they know that God and whatever. Those two people are not going to convince each other that their God is not real, no matter what you do. And that's how wars break out, right? Whatever religion it is, whatever God or the universe or source or quantum physics, whatever it is, right? You're not going to convince that person if you just say, your God is not the real one, my God is the real one. Just like I'm not going to tell you, Michael, that you're not real. You don't exist. Because in a way, you could look at yourself as God. And if I told you you're not real, you know that you're real. Just like a Muslim, I know that God is real. I communicate with God. Or a Christian, I know God is real. Or someone who doesn't believe in anything, I know that I'm real, what I'm thinking. Or someone who believes in everything, I know that what's in here. You have dialogues in your head. What are those? You look at some of the masters, in the Sistine Chapel where they have Adam and God touching the fingers. You know what I'm talking about? And it's all in the shape of the brain, and God the Father is the prefrontal cortex, and you have the other deities and angels representing other parts of the brain, other parts of consciousness, that those gods correspond to those ways of thinking that happen in those parts of the brain. And it's a really complex question.
Yes, a lot going on
there.
But
I don't say it from a place of belief.
Okay, I understand that, considering everything you just said. And it sounds like you put a lot of thought into it too, like going on a lot of years of built-up thought. It's pretty clear to me. But like tying into that too, you do also touch on death in music. There was Happy Face, and then there was Precious Time. Both of those did reflect on death. One of them was like being a ticking time bomb. So I'm curious along the lines of like the veins of those beliefs. I'm curious on uh, you being so open to approach that kind of subject in music, which I really appreciated personally. Is it something that you again like went into it being like, okay, this is an important topic to me. I kind of want to get it in here.
Yeah, with Happy Face, the ticking like a time bomb.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's specifically death. It's more like a cycle. You know, it's flip the switch, flip the stove, we're all gone mad, let's start the show. It's like,
Yeah.
it's this sort of alchemical brew. You have a stove brewing, and it's like, uh, it's shadow work where you're making something. It's kind of sinister, like
Hmm.
you're casting the shadow to make people think something that's not real. um but that darkness has a limit on it. It's ticking like a time bomb, like there's only so far it can go. And that's sort of the idea of, hey, put on a happy face, like everything is fine, everything's good, but on social media, but like people will find out eventually if you're not really doing good.
They
Like,
will.
the most important part is you'll find out eventually.
That really kind of relates to a long time coming a little bit as far as that
Mm.
dark, that getting through that darkness.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm really glad that you have that projector behind you playing the movie because that ties us so perfectly with another question I have. I heard you say something about wanting to be an actor at some point, and I'm picking up. Oh, I have the hoodie, obviously, which is pretty movie themed, and like the online promo that went with Down to You. There's also some songs that, and I could be like way off base, and please tell me if I am. But there's some songs that give me like kind of score vibes. Not a lot, like two or three. Long Time Coming is one of them with the chorus and just how kind of loud and epic it is. But then there's others like A Good Day and Move to You, which also give me that vibe, not in the epicness of it, but sort of like in the old school, more classic movie sense, like traditional score sound. Is that something that you like your music and your affinity for movies? Are those somehow linked?
Yeah, big time.
Yes, I was
When
hoping
I
you'd say yes.
It's so good. When I started making music, I was like really obsessed with movie soundtracks.
Yes.
And still am. I listen to movie soundtracks almost every day. I love soundtracks. I love scores. So I definitely love the big epicness and even movie story arcs. I love great archetypal stories and breaking them down and what they mean, and because you can tell this, like, it's really the same story that's being, the Matrix is the same story as Pinocchio, is the same story as Sleeping Beauty, is the same story as Cloud Atlas, whatever it
Uh-huh.
is, they're like, it's the same story as Star Wars, but told in different ways in different worlds. Is the same story of Jesus, is the same story of Hanuman, like it's these amazing stories that are hopefully built to show something about the nature of oneself and a pattern of being that we can align to, whether that's Luke Skywalker or Harry Potter or Jesus or Pinocchio or whatever these stories are, Hercules. We can align ourselves with these heroes. Okay, well, we're going to have to go through these steps, and that's the pattern of being, and that expands your consciousness, and that saves the world, because saving yourself is saving the world. And that's a big concept, but movies, not all movies, but some of the great movies really, really do that.
Yeah.
And great music does that too, has done that, especially, um, you know, there's a few of the great artists who have really done that and hit it on the head. And on the surface, they seem like very simple songs and sing along, but you dive into them and it's beautiful that people are singing along with this, even if they don't know how deep it is. They're still seeding it into their own being as they sing along. And I think that's the power of all art, whether that's a movie or a song or a painting or creating anything. It's to do that. And I think in some ways, it's largely been diminished. I'm not going to say lost, but diminished in the last, you know, 10, 20 years of like, what's the purpose? Like, why are we, if you're an artist, why are you making music? Or
Hmm.
why are you making a movie? Or why are you writing a book? Or why are you creating anything, creating a family? Why?
Yeah.
Why? And if you don't know why, you're kind of just doing it unconsciously. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that either. You know, there's nothing wrong that with making music that you just like, and that's cool, and hopefully other people like it too, but there's the potential for it to be really, really powerful.
I completely agree with you. And it's you say why, and it's easy to just say to make money, to get a check, clicks,
Yeah.
whatever it might be. And if that's what you want to do, fine, whatever. And that might be the case, it might not be the case. That's probably my perspective on it. And I'm glad you said that. That it's kind of gone away from it a bit over the last few years, because it kind of leads me to another question. And it's geared along the lines of, I follow you on social media, Twitter and Instagram. And well, first of all, you have some sick dance moves. I wish I had that. I wish I had that in me. Like, I was watching it at first, and I was like, "Wait, no, that's got to be edited, right?" But I'm like, "No, I don't think it is. I think he's just doing that." I'm like, I don't, how does the body do that? So check out Roy's Instagram, because he's got moves, like, legit.
But do you know the story behind that?
I don't. If you have it, please tell me.
So the only reason I started doing those dance videos is because I was doing what's called shadow work, and it's in part. One of the ways you can do it is in meditation. You go into sort of like your deep psyche, and it starts from asking questions. And I was asking the question, why don't I dance? Like at a wedding or at a party or wherever, or at even when I was in high school, like at a school dance, I'd kind of just like
Yeah, and you were that guy in the corner.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You nod your head, you're trying to look cool, and you're kind of moving, and maybe you do a little of this, but you feel uncomfortable inside,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, totally.
Um, and so I was like, why? Because there's a reason why for everything. You just have to ask. So I was doing this, and I came to a memory that I hadn't thought of in a long time when I was about 6 years old, 7 years old, like really young. Um, you mentioned earlier, I was like, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be an actor. Um, and because of that, my mom was like, well, there's no acting lessons at your school, but they have dance lessons, and maybe you could dance because you love to dance around the house. Because when I was a kid, I was just like, woo, like wherever, like
Mhm.
kids just dance. And I was like, yeah, like that sounds awesome. Like, and she's like, all right. So she put me in dance class, and I went out with her. I had a little blonde bowl cut, you know, and I bought tights, ballet shoes, tap shoes, like all the things for the dance class that you needed. And I went in like so stoked, and I went to class, and I was having so much fun. It was so awesome. And I was just like, yeah, like I was always really amped as a kid. And a few weeks in, the little girls who were in the class with me started making fun of me and saying, "You're not a real boy. You're not a real boy." And I was like, I didn't even realize that I was the only boy in the class. Um, and but like after a while, I was like, oh, what? And they kept making fun of me. And it's not the little girl's fault,
Yeah.
but when you're a little kid, you're not able to see things. And then so one day, long story short, I came home crying, and I said, I'm never going to dance again, like whatever, and just felt ashamed and embarrassed, and, all these things that you don't know how to process as a 6-year old, 7-year old kid. Um, and that was seeded, and there's so many things throughout each of our lives that happen, that they're from some moment in our childhood or something in our past that then we don't even know where it comes from later. And that was one for me. I was like, wow, it all came from that. Because then, like, there's this tiny little moments along the rest of your life that then um, sort of solidify that thought, and then it's pushed down so deep into your subconscious you don't know where it came from. So anyway, it was working through that, and I'm like, I'm just going to make videos
Oh,
and
shit.
dance like I would if I was a little kid,
I love
and put
that.
them online. If they're bad, if they're whatever, it doesn't, like,
Hmm.
I haven't done dance lessons since I was 7 years old, but I'm having fun, and that's all I did it for. And so it was sort of a way for me to unpack that in my own psyche.
Okay, yeah, you had that fun stripped away from you with the reaction to it, and were able to like rediscover that. That's so awesome. That's something that I think all of us can use. It's something that's like pushed down in there that we can bring back and like use it as some source of, whether it be joy or just incorporation into our day-to-day lives. I'm glad that you gave me that, because I didn't even really expect an answer to the dance thing. It was just like, this is amazing. And the Instagram thing originally was that, I obviously, like I said, I follow your social media, and we're talking before about like, why do people do certain things? Why is it, and I said, is it for a check? Is it for clicks? Whatever it might be. Like, what's interesting to me is you said something that on Instagram specifically that like really made me feel something, and it was that you had to deprogram yourself. And there was like another post too, where like it's almost linked from like the old power structures that I would imagine you mean like the ones that are like designed for success. Like, how did you work your way through that to get to this point?
Very good question. Um, Throughout my whole career, calling it a career is weird to me.
Oh,
Throughout my whole time creating music, I had this belief that I needed to work with the biggest producers or the biggest record label or agent
yeah.
or lawyer, whoever, right? Industry gatekeepers. And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be successful. And so I made my decisions for most of my career, especially early on, based on like external validation of this person says that they're going to do this for me and they can do this, make me a big artist. Or they say I need to do this type of song, so I'll do that type of song. Um, but it never happened for me. It never really worked out. And I, over the last couple of years, sort of all those things, well, a lot of it was internal work. And I was like, I don't need this anymore. It hasn't worked for me trying to do it this way and being on a big major label and being with a big someone named manager and, all these things. And it's like I have to work with this producer who's done this number one artist and this number one artist and whatever, right? Because that validates me. Now I'm creating music independently with my friends who I just love and believe in, who are talented, with a team that's built around Jaguar Twin, who are all like-minded and also friends. Like Josh, who you met, my managers, is my friend for 15 years. We used to play music together. He was a drummer, and 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 he didn't have any music industry experience. But the interesting thing is that doing it this way, very only recently, has led to more success
Yeah.
externally, let's say, more streams, more people listening and finding out about the music, like to an insane degree, than a record label trying to put me and my music into a system and pump money into it. That never worked. And it's not me specifically. It's I don't exactly know what or why, but for whatever reason, I wasn't supposed to go down that traditional structure. It didn't work ever, and I think a lot of it was because I was placing all my value and worth on what other people said about me or the music, and changing that to being like, I know now that I'm telling the truth from my perspective, and that's all that matters. And I'm just going to keep doing that. And it's a truth experiment. And that's what all, whether you're religious or not, doesn't matter, or you believe in quantum physics, which is just science. It's like, well, they're all saying a similar thing, and that consciousnesses are linked, and that essentially you could boil it down to tell the truth. Really, tell the truth, and it will be good, whatever happens. But telling the truth is super hard.
Yeah, it is. Uh, and there's a reason it resonated with me so much. And it's on a smaller scale, but like even just doing this, there was a point starting off where it was like, okay, do you? And I did it a couple times. Absolutely did it. Where it's like, do you do this because it's gonna? Do you react review to this artist and this video because it's gonna get more views? It's gonna get more attention on you, which is success at the time anyway. That's the mind frame. Even though I struggled with that idea, but I would do it, and I only did it a couple times, but I definitely did it, and I wasn't like satisfied or fulfilled at all, and I very quickly veered into, and I mentioned it earlier, that more honest route where it was like, okay, like I'm gonna be sitting through something, it's got to be something that I know I can just not have to worry about filling space with words. I can be honest. I can very easily just let those words and feelings, more than anything, flow to what I'm hearing, and veering away from like those bigger things, and going more in the direction of like, okay, this resonates with me. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Has been so fulfilling. Whether or not it cost me like a couple, I wouldn't know honestly, because I stopped doing it. But it's been just such a more fulfilling experience, which I feel like is a lighter version, kind of what you were getting at. But it does tie into that whole honesty thing again. And it is hard to do that.
Yeah, it's not even a live version. Like it's incredibly difficult if you're listening to a song to just pick whatever song, and even if it is a big song, say, and it's a big artist and you're listening to it, but like to tell the truth from your perspective, like even if everybody loves this album, but you listen to it, you're like, I didn't really like this, and here's why. Like being bold enough to say also what you don't like doesn't mean you're right or wrong. It's just your perspective. But what you'll find is that people will then resonate with you more when you're just honest and tell the truth. So I applaud you for doing what you do and telling the truth.
Thank you, Roy. That means a lot coming from you, someone I've quickly admired recently, so, which makes all this so much. I want to say too, like the best thing about doing, and I've got like another, like one more question for you. I won't keep you too long, but the best thing about doing this, I've learned, it's hard to like pick one best thing. Like one very obvious one is I get to hear like great music that I would have never heard otherwise. But the other thing is that it's the interaction, and I get a ton of it, whether it be like on here or on Patreon, and you really get to know people. And what I've found is that a lot of people really like, a lot of the artists that I check out on the channel, and you're one of them obviously, their fan base reflects that artist so significantly. And I found that with you, and that's why we're here now, because you have a fan base that is like just the views, beliefs, ideals, however you want to put it, like align themselves with the stuff that I believe in so significantly, and that's why we're here now. And that's been my favorite thing to like. There's been a bunch of artists I've checked on here that I absolutely adore their fan bases, and it's because I also adore the artists and like the energy I've gotten from that artist, and there's such an alignment in that I've found. So shout out to your fans, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, big shout out to Jack. I struggle with the word fans because fans comes from fanatic, and I think we need less fanatics in the world. But it's beautiful that human beings who like my music, like they're amazing. For ease of use, I'll say fans, I guess now, so I don't have to say a mouthful every time. But
you said what'd you say on Instagram? The millions of when your loser went viral on TikTok, and you said millions of viewers or watchers or something. What'd you say?
I have no idea.
It was a different word. Not easy to use whatsoever.
Millions of mind, body, spirit complexes who have heard the music, who resonate with it as I do.
Love that.
Not
ease of use, but I love that.
Yeah, not easy to use. But yeah, Jaguar Twin fans are so beautiful, and I've enjoyed so much getting to know them and who they are, and you know, see them. You look into someone's eyes, and we talked about this earlier, when you're like, and we're all seeing reflections of ourselves, and they're seeing reflections of themselves in you. And oftentimes that's why we're fans of an artist, because I think about the artists that I'm fans of, and I'm like, wow, I I want to be more like that. It's showing me something about myself. Or a movie we're a fan of. You're a fan because it shows something about yourself. You can't perceive anything in anything else unless it exists in you. And that's on positive things and that's on negative things. And it is interesting that different artists have totally different groups of fans who resonate with them,
Totally
because
different.
on some level it's that fan of whoever or whatever artist that is finding something about that artist that, well, maybe they're as a fan say really really shy, but the artist is super super outgoing. And it's like, well, they're maybe this is like a loose example, right? But maybe the potential for them being like that is there and they want to be that, so they align themselves with that artist. And I mean, it goes a lot deeper than that with a fan artist connection. But
Yeah.
some ways, like, we're all fans of things. And the deepest things would be like in whatever Greek mythology, you're a fan of Hercules, or whoever, Dionysus. It's like, but there's something in that, oh, I can align myself to that. And it's an ancient thing. It
I love.
just always takes different forms.
I love how you always find a way to bring it back to mythology somehow.
I know.
I'm so into
Everything is
that.
mythology. That's why I'm so fascinated about it, is
Yeah.
because every single thing is built upon mythological themes. You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
And so studying it is like you're studying the base level, and then you can start to see it in everything.
It goes so far back. Achilles' heel refers to such a large, definitive thing when you think about it.
Yep.
And it was based on like mythology, obviously.
Yep.
All right, last thing. So you have a project coming out, I assume, and you can discuss it if you like or not. But you've definitely dropped a couple singles here, "Down to You" and "I Like to Party," and we've talked about honesty a lot. And it's been a consistent theme, and it's a very particular theme in those two songs, especially "I Like to Party." Is that something that we can expect more of in the next project? Also, I'm very curious as to if you, and we talked about it a little bit, but if you struggled with that, like just plain old honesty throughout your life, whether it be when you were writing music, when you were going through relationships, with religion, like we talked about, at any point, and like, how are you at that point in your life now with it? Just the word honesty, because it's just such a big theme with you, I feel like.
I think why now I'm so passionate about telling the truth, and doing my best to tell the truth, right? Like, I have so far to go.
Yeah.
With truth, and it's a constant evolution. But I think why I'm so big on it now is because for a large portion of my life, especially when I was younger, it's like I really lied a lot, like mostly to myself. But then it was reflected in my relationship with others. I mean, it's funny. My brother, when he met the girl who's now his wife, and but when they just started dating, he was like, "Hey, bro, like I'm older than him," and he's like, "I need some like dating advice. Like, I really like this girl." And my legit advice to him was, yeah, just like don't be yourself. Like,
Oh no,
pretend like you don't really like her. Like, like it's like
Roy.
complete opposite of what you should do.
Roy.
But that was legitimately how
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah.
And
Oh
that,
man.
but on every level, and there are a lot of reasons for that. And he didn't follow my advice, thankfully, and now they're married.
Congratulations.
But
That's so
that's
great.
it's and especially in music, like for so long not telling the truth from my perspective and doing things that I thought would be successful, or I'd really, more than successful, thought other people would like, or thought or even like the way that I dress for so long was I want other people to think that I'm cool, or I want to make sure I'm wearing the designer this and this. And it was like, all lies because of myself. And now it's just like I just wear what I want to wear at any given moment. And it doesn't matter if someone thinks it's cool or not. I like it. Like I got this hat and I saw it at this Peruvian
I
store
love that. I
in
love that, by the
and
way.
I was like, this is awesome to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And so yeah, I mean it's a continual exploration of truth and really getting into the truth of who am I. That's what I'm getting at. That's really what we're all getting at. Who are we? Who am I? And then every other truth kind of comes out from that. So the new album continues to dive really deep into that. And also, did you get a chance to listen to I Like to Party?
I did. I absolutely did. I listened to it. I recorded me listening to it. So
Cool. I'm excited to see that.
whenever the headlines, I'll drop that. I am a big fan of it. You have some big sounds in both songs, and that just gets my energy going. I love like there's so much to interpret, and I like to party. I feel like I love. I can't tell you enough how much Roy I love and if you when you watch the video, you'll see that it just like knocked me in the face. The cake, the baking cake of like the lies and truths. And I was like, whoa, because he's not just saying lie. He's saying like it's a mixture, and that's just so fascinating to me. And like you just having your own area where it's all truth, as opposed to like being exposed to like all these lies that we tend to get fed. And yeah, I just loved it, man. I loved it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. That one, that's one like I was a little bit scared. It's like it's my observation on what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, well, I gotta tell the truth and release this, and what it is what it will be.
I love that. I love that mindset, man. Seriously, as someone who's just maximum open minded when it comes to that stuff, it's just a beautiful thing. And I think it's gonna do well, and I hope it does, obviously, because it's a great message.
It's a fun one.
But thank you so much, Roy. This is amazing that you came here and sat down with me, and it means a lot to me. I can't say that enough. I think I said it a few times already. So really, thank you.
Thanks for having me. You are a star, dude. Just believe it because you really are, man. And I appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you, Roy. That means a lot. I'm gonna record the part where you said I'm a star and save it into like loop it like whenever I'm struggling with something. I'm just gonna say Jaguar Twit said I was a star, so I'm good. I could like defeat the enemy
True,
within.
man. It's the truth.
Thanks, man. Thanks, brother. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, follow me. Lock up your door.